The Black Wall Street and Mabel story, it inspired me.
We were not the perpetrators, we were the victims.
We were to go back in time to 1920 and walk up and down Greenwood Avenue.
The 19th of June, 2020 was the day that the United States President Donald Trump scheduled his very first public campaign event after March 2020. This sparked outrage across the United States, particularly from the black leaders and members of the black community. The rally was scheduled to be held in Tulsa, no less, which seemed to fan the flames even more. Now, President Trump's campaign managers and staff insisted this was all a coincidence and scheduled the rally to happen on the 20th of June instead. Why did it cause outrage? What is the significance of the 19th of June? What happened in Tulsa? We're going to be talking about all that and more in this video. Today we will be talking about the Black Wall Street Massacre, one of the deadliest acts of racial violence in history. A trigger warning for those who are watching. We will be talking about sensitive topics like racial violence, torture, and murder. This is Business Explained. To learn more about all things money, get educated about how to do business, become business savvy, and enjoy more videos like these, subscribe to my channel and click on the notification bell, and may you be granted with many, many sweet returns. Let's take a look at how society was back then. In 1921, the atmosphere in Oklahoma was charged socially, politically, and racially. 1918 signaled the end of the First World War, and soldiers and servicemen began to make their way back to America. Memories of the American Civil War were still very fresh in everyone's mind, in spite of it having ended roughly 40 years earlier. In 1915, the movie Birth of a Nation was released, which prompted the infamous Ku Klux Klan to re-emerge in society. Tulsa was a bustling oil city and had a big population of rich, educated, and influential black Americans. All of these factors led to the tense atmosphere around the region, and they contributed to the massacre. When Oklahoma was recognized as a state on the 16th of November, 1907, they passed racial segregation laws. Most blacks were effectively put at a disadvantage by these laws, as the law stated that all rail travel would be segregated and they would not be allowed to serve on juries or hold positions in local office. Lynchings were also common during the early 20th century as a part of an effort to maintain supposed white supremacy. So what happened that sparked the Black Wall Street Massacre? A gruesome tragedy of senseless violence sparked by racism? It all began with an accusation. 19-year-old Dick Rowland, a black shoe shiner, was accused of assaulting 17-year-old Sarah Page, the white elevator operator of the Drexel building. On May 30th, 1921, Dick Rowland had used the elevator to go to the top floor of the Drexel building, where a bathroom restricted for black people was. The bathroom at the top of the building was the nearest to Rowland, and it would make sense that he would be there frequently whenever he was working. He and Sarah Page likely knew each other by face because of this, especially since the elevator was the only one in the building. According to a clerk who had been working his shift at the clothing store in the Drexel building, he had heard a woman scream and saw a black man immediately run out of the building. Deciding to investigate, the clerk headed toward the elevator and found Page seemingly shaken up. Naturally, he assumed that she had been assaulted and called the police. Of course, since there had been no one in the elevator except the two of them, it was difficult to ascertain what had really gone down that caused Sarah Page to scream and Dick Rowland to flee. However, Dick Rowland was upheld by his peers, saying that he would never be capable of sexual assault. The authorities questioned Sarah Page, but there are no written accounts of her statement. The police deemed that what had happened between Page and Rowland was not assault and had conducted a quiet investigation instead of launching a full-blown manhunt. Page refused to press charges, saying that Rowland had only grabbed her arm. However, in spite of not being charged, it was unsafe for Rowland to just go walk free.
They heard a white girl scream and saw a young black man running.
The mere speculation that Rowland could have hurt Sarah Page put him at risk for being attacked by white people, keeping in mind that it was never actually confirmed what had happened inside the elevator, and that Sarah Page herself said that Rowland had only grabbed her arm. Rowland decided to stay with his mother at her house in Greenwood to wait it out until it was safe. Now, Greenwood was a district in Tulsa that was home to many prominent and affluent Black Americans. It was so preposterous that it was known as a Black Wall Street. Black Americans established and put up their own businesses and fostered a thriving community. On the morning after the incident between Page and Rowland happened, Rowland was detained and arrested by white detective Henry Carmichael and black detective Henry C. Pack. He was then held at the Tulsa City Jail until Police Commissioner J.M. Atkinson received an anonymous call that threatened Dick Rowland's life. Rowland was then moved to a more secure jail at the Tulsa County Courthouse. A white-owned paper called Tulsa Tribune published the story of Dick Rowland and Sarah Page, with the headline, "Nab Negro for Attacking Girl in an Elevator." Some witnesses even declared that the same newspaper called for the lynching of Dick Rowland on the very same day it was released. It fanned the flames surrounding the entire ordeal even hotter, and more people began to harbor dangerously hostile feelings toward Rowland. That particular news edition of the Tribune was released in the afternoon, and local authorities were on high alert because talks of a lynching circulated just an hour after. A mob of several hundred white people stood just outside the courthouse where Rowland was being held. Rowland was terrified, so to ensure his safety, the sheriff had his men make a blockade around him that would make it difficult for anyone to get through. The white individuals demanded that the authorities hand over Rowland to them so they can seek justice on their own terms, and in spite of the sheriff attempting to pacify the crowd, it was to no avail. They simply became angrier and more outraged. The black members of the community talked amongst themselves about the situation at hand. They believed that Rowland's life was seriously in danger, and they were determined to make sure that Rowland does not get lynched. However, they differed in strategies. Some wanted to take up arms, while some wanted to pursue more peaceful means of defending Rowland. That night, a few black men brought their guns over to the courthouse to assist the sheriff and his men in protecting Rowland. Having seen these, the white people went back home to get their own guns and decided to arm themselves. The crowds grew and grew as the hours passed, and the overall mood was charged and hostile. To make matters worse, rumors began to fly around Greenwood about whites storming the courthouse to forcibly take Rowland. Somewhere along the night, arguments brewed and the people began to exchange fire. During this time, 10 white individuals and 2 black individuals were either dead or badly wounded. Throughout the night, armed whites and blacks fought against each other using guns, and you would think that the earlier casualties were enough to keep the rumor mill at bay, but instead, it came back all the more viciously. Rumors of black individuals calling for reinforcements and the reinforcements coming by train circulated, which prompted the opposing party to shoot at incoming passenger trains. White residents then began throwing rags coated in oil into the building within the black community and had lit them up, effectively setting the buildings on fire. The white mob then set fire to the businesses along the commercial district of Greenwood, Archer Street. The fire department attempted to put out these fires, but they were threatened away with guns. The white rioters then attacked the residential areas, looting and breaking into homes. They would drive out the residents from their houses and usher them into vehicles where they would be shipped to detention centers. Black community members were fearful for their lives, as the tension continually escalated throughout the entire night. The massacre made national news, and the number of casualties varied. However, the Tulsa Tribune reported that a total of 9 white people and 68 black people had died, later changing the number to a whopping 176 casualties. Mobs of white residents had attacked black residents, with many of them being deputized and armed by the city's officials themselves. To this day, it is known as the single worst incident of racial violence in American history.
Years following, black residents who came back to the area knew that those possessions that they had left behind were now in white-owned homes and businesses.
When President Donald Trump scheduled his presidential campaign on a June 10th weekend, which is supposed to celebrate the emancipation of slaves across America, and decided to host it in Tulsa, the site of the gruesome massacre, the black leaders called it a slap to the face. Nowadays, racism still runs rampant in many areas of the United States, and even across the globe, and concentrated steps need to be taken by people in position of power in order to put a stop to them completely. What are your thoughts on the Black Wall Street Massacre? What do you think the authorities should have done to curb the violence brought about by the rioters? Let me know what you think and let's talk about it in the comment section down below. I will respond to all of you who comment within the first hour. If you like this video, you should definitely check out my other video called Garmin Ransomware Attack, Work of Evil Corp. Typically, hostage situations play out like this. Armed masked intruders enter a public space like a bank or a grocery store and yell for everyone to get down as they take all the cash and valuables they can before getting the heck out of there. However, technology has given rise to a terrifying new kind of hostage situation that, with just the right mind to execute it, can incapacitate every single sector of a business for as long as they want to and until the company can meet their demands. Sounds scary, doesn't it? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about with the case of Garmin and Evil Corp and how Evil Corp took over the entirety of Garmin's systems, forcing the latter to pay a hefty ransom. But wait, who is Evil Corp? What do they do? And just how much did they ask Garmin to pay them? I'll be answering all those questions and more, so watch Garmin Ransomware Attack, Work of Evil Corp. Sit back, relax, and listen up as I tell you about ransomware and what went down between Garmin and Evil Corp. Stay tuned, stay educated.